Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Carlene Spry. I am the awards administrator for the Golden Crown Literary Awards, and I want to welcome you to the first ever series of Goldie Finalist Spotlights. Now, for those of you who are new to the Golden Crown Literary Society, the GCLS recognizes and rewards quality literary works about women who love women, and we provide learning opportunities, encouragement, and assistance to new and established writers. We have a very highly respected writing academy, an annual conference where readers, writers, publishers, and editors gather, and that's going to be happening virtually next month. And we have a monthly GCLS members only online book club. So we invite you to learn more about the GCLS and perhaps become a member by visiting our website, goldencrown.org. Now, we will have some time at the end of the session for Q&A. Please be sure to use the Zoom Q&A box to submit a question. If you run into technical issues, please log off, then log back in. That usually resolves most issues. Closed captioning is available today and can be accessed from the bottom of your Zoom screen. And we are thrilled to have Flashpoint Publications as our sponsor today. Let's hear a little bit from Flashpoint Publications.
At Flashpoint Publications, it is our mission to bring LGBTQIA+ stories to life. In support of the growing multiracial and multi-age coalition of those who demand unbiased treatment and inclusion in all pursuits, we welcome you into our house. We support diversity within our works and welcome novels penned by and for all people. Flashpoint is a proud member of GCLS, and we wish to congratulate all the finalists, including our own authors, Tammy Bird and Kay Ayton. We hope to see everyone in person next year.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Flashpoint. We do certainly appreciate your support. So let's go ahead and get started, and let me introduce our authors today. We're going to start with Radclyffe reading from Treacherous Seas, which is a finalist in Romantic Blend. And then next will be Anna Burke reading from a finalist in Contemporary Romance Long Novels, Spindrift. Then we'll hear from Georgia Beers reading a selection from Hopeless Romantic, a finalist in Contemporary Romance Mid-Length Novels. Tammy Bird will read from her mystery thriller crime shortlisted novel, The Book of Promises. And we'll close out the reading portion of our session with Melissa Brayden reading from her shortlisted Contemporary Romance Long Novel, Entangled. Okay, look at all your happy, smiling faces. Wonderful. Good morning. Radclyffe, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Carlene. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm really delighted to be here. Well, it's afternoon for me, morning for you, or perhaps evening. I'm going to be reading from Treacherous Seas today. This is the 10th entry in the Provincetown Tales. And as with most of my series, the book itself, this one is a standalone romance introducing several new romantic characters, but it also revisits many of the characters from the previous tales in the Provincetown series. I'm actually reading from the opening of the book. It will introduce one of the main characters, one of the new main characters to you, who is Andy Champlain, who is a young police officer who has just joined the force. As with all of my continuing series, the location is often critical to the sensibility of the story, so that you'll get a little taste of Provincetown, I hope. Andy Champlain loved warm summer nights when the sultry heat of the day still lingered like a soft breeze against her skin. Tonight, the hint of cotton candy mixed with fresh salt air brought images of long ago trips to the Atlantic City boardwalk, of dodging in and out of the surf and racing down the crowded sidewalks to her favorite ice cream stand, determined to get there ahead of her fleeter older brother. The memories, viewed through the sepia lens of time, carried a familiar patina of sadness, and she pushed the past away. Walking a beat on the night shift in Provincetown was a whole new kind of special. And after 6 weeks, she still wasn't used to the way a breeze off the water would catch her unawares and leave her exhilarated and unaccountably content. As she passed through the intersection at Standish and Commercial, maneuvering her way through the crowd spilling out of the ice cream shop on the corner, she scanned down the wharf to the harbor, past the blinking lights on the fishing trawlers moored along the dock, into the darkness of the far reaches of the bay, where pinpoints of light dotted the inky water, as if the sky had turned upside down and dumped the stars atop the waves. Farther out toward Long Point, the rhythmic pulse of the lighthouse beacon beat in counterpoint to the lowing of the foghorn. Here on the street winding along the harbor's edge, at just one before one in the morning, life bustled as if sleep was a forgotten pastime. Many of the stores clustered along Commercial Street in the center of town had closed at sundown, but the bars and clubs were open, as was the Mediterranean place across from Town Hall, the cookie and candy place next to it, and of course, Spiritus Pizza, the final congregating point for partygoers before everyone finally disappeared into the condos, bed and breakfasts, and rare motels. Being on foot after riding in a patrol car during her month-long training period suited her fine. She relished the chance to feel the night tingling on her skin, to get close to the life that seethed along the main thoroughfare and up the narrow alleys, to breathe in the fragrances of pizza and steak and the occasional whiff of a tantalizing scent as someone brushed past her, smelling like sin. Movement, adrenaline, and danger kept her fed as surely as any food. Her radio crackled just as she passed in front of the Unitarian Church. 3 Baker 15, report of a disturbance at the Ale House, the dispatcher at the station reported. A disturbance, a bar fight most likely, or one about to erupt, was practically a nightly occurrence. At closing time, the occasional rumpus wasn't unusual, not with a few hundred sexed up, usually liquored up bodies, jostling for a hookup, or realizing that the person they'd come with had already hooked up elsewhere. Usually, just a police officer walking into the place quieted things down. At least, in her 6 weeks' experience policing in the town, that had been the case. Andy's pulse kicked up a notch. 10-4, Andy replied. I'm a minute away. Adam 101 en route, 3 minutes out, the dispatcher added. Copy, Andy said, breaking into an easy jog. She was right around the corner from the bar, a popular place on a side street halfway between Commercial and Bradford. Mostly a guy bar, but not exclusively. Known for its leather clientele, but again, not exclusively. She reached the place a good 2 minutes before her backup. Bree Parker, who'd been her training officer the month before, would have trouble getting through town in her patrol car, even if she put her lights on. People just couldn't move out of the way in the narrow one-way street, even if they wanted to. And most of the time, the pedestrians played chicken with vehicles, just to register their displeasure at being inconvenienced while out on a stroll. And really, what was the point of waiting while whatever was going on inside heated up? Andy was already there. The longer she waited, the more chance things would escalate. She might be new to town, but not to the job. She gave it another 30 seconds until a clutch of people burst out of the doors, one of them screaming, "That maniac's got a knife." Andy jumped the 3 steps to the narrow porch, running the length of the building, and pushed her way through the clot of customers, all trying to get out through the single narrow front door, and without hesitating, ran inside. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the readings this morning and the discussion.
Yay! This is the wild applause coming from the audience that we can't hear. So I will fill in for them. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Rad. So let's move on. Anna, the floor is yours.
It's so great to follow after Radclyffe, you know? Entering after the greats. Well, so normally the only steam I like in the morning comes from my cup of hot coffee, but just for you all today, I'm going to leave my comfort zone and read the scene from Spindrift that made my editor, Rachel Spangler, forget to pick her kid up from school. So at this point, Amelia has returned to Maine to deal with her father's estate after his death. And in the process, she's run into her childhood crush, Morgan Donovan. At this point in the story, Morgan and Amelia have been trying to resist their attraction for about the last 120 pages, but the willpower fails them at last when Morgan offers to help Amelia repair a boat. Oh, I'm nervous. Are you ready to do this? Morgan asked. We can always come back later. You can borrow my skiff if you need one. The inundation of grief receded, but she felt like something raw and exposed left on the sand by the tide. In the shadows of the dim aisle, out of the glare of the June sun, the loneliness that had followed her since her father's death assailed her. It clawed at her breath, and she closed her eyes in sudden pain. Morgan squeezed her shoulder. Amelia knew the gesture was meant to reassure, but the human touch against the rawness of her grief severed what little control she'd managed to maintain. Need raced along her synapses and forced everything else out of its way. The scent of Morgan's shampoo flooded her senses, erasing the smell of the ocean and the slightly musty odor of the boathouse. Heat from Morgan's body cut through the chill of shaded concrete and damp wood. Something that might have been a curse or a prayer beat its wings in Amelia's throat. She pushed Morgan against the row of lockers, taking her by surprise and knocking her off balance. Her blue eyes flew wide open, and she didn't move from where Amelia had pinned her. Beneath Amelia's hands, Morgan felt like the only solid thing in the world. Barely 4 inches separated them. She searched Morgan's face. Shock faded, and the sound of Morgan's rapid breathing filled her ears. This close, she could count the freckles peppering her cheekbones. There was still time to pull away, apologize, and blame her actions on grief and emotional instability. Her eyes fell on Morgan's lips. Need lanced through her again. She met Morgan's eyes and saw the same need reflected there. Morgan's mouth met hers with hunger. Amelia deepened the kiss with her body, pressing her full weight into Morgan. Hands pulled her hip in closer. Her hips. That's just the one hip that would be uncomfortable. She drew her teeth over Morgan's bottom lip, brushing her tongue along it as she did. This isn't a first kiss, she thought. This is... Her mind blanked as Morgan ran her fingers up her back, thumbs dragging up her sides and drawing a whimper of desire with them. Morgan's lips moved downward, but Amelia closed her hands more tightly around her hair and stopped her. Instead, she kissed the smooth line of jaw leading down to her throat, tasting sweat and something else. Something purely Morgan. Morgan gasped when Amelia nipped at the skin along her neck. The sound, so feminine and so at odds with her androgynous persona, drove any last shred of resolve out of Amelia's mind. She abandoned her hold on Morgan's hair and raked her nails down her arm. Oh, fuck. Morgan flung her head back as Amelia's tongue passed over the hollow of her collarbone. She tried to push Amelia off and turn her against the wall, but Amelia stopped her, taking Morgan by the wrist as her mouth moved back up to brush her ear. Morgan gasped again. Amelia traced the curve of her ear and felt her shudder. Still gripping Morgan's wrists, she returned to her mouth, teasing her lips with long, slow strokes. She knew Morgan could have fought her off if she'd really wanted to top Amelia, but she also knew with growing certainty that Morgan wanted no such thing. It felt good, intoxicatingly good, to set the pace herself. She released Morgan's wrists and skimmed her fingertips up the bare skin of Morgan's arms. Morgan clung to Amelia's belt and whimpered into her mouth as Amelia ran her fingertips just as lightly down the sides of her, down her sides and further, lifting the hem of her shirt to trace the smooth skin of her stomach. She wanted to slide her hand past Morgan's belt. She wanted to be inside Morgan, needed to feel her, needed to taste her hot against her. I have a stutter, so occasionally I'm unable to speak. Amelia, Morgan's voice, raw, stopped her hand. She leaned her forehead against Morgan's as her breath mingled in the space between them. Do you want me to stop? Amelia asked. Morgan groaned in frustration and her hips pushed into Amelia's. No, fuck, Amelia slipped her hand into the waistband of Morgan's jeans. Just what? Just... Morgan's chest rose and fell, and she kept her eyes shut as she tried to speak past the shudders racking her body. Is this what you want? Amelia drew a line along the border of Morgan's briefs. Is this what you want? That is not what I asked. Footsteps sounded on the wood of the wharf. Amelia kissed her hard in the mouth, willing the intruder back into their boat so that she could fuck Morgan Donovan blind against this wall, right now, right here. A child laughed in the distance. Fuck, she swore as she pulled away. Morgan's flushed cheeks glowed in the near darkness, and removing her hands felt like the hardest thing Amelia had ever done. She allowed herself to linger in the shelter of Morgan's arms until the footsteps drew even with the boathouse. We should patch that boat of yours, Morgan said in her ear. Each word vibrated through her. Or we could go out in your boat. I have a 4 o'clock appointment. Morgan's voice dripped regret. That gives us an hour. If you think I'll be done with you in an hour, Morgan said, then you've severely underestimated me.
Yay! Okay. Thank you so much, Anna. Now that everybody is wide awake, let's hear from Georgia Beers.
Hi, I'm Georgia. I like scary movies, wine tasting, and long walks on the beach. And I don't want to follow that, but thanks, Anna. But I will. How are you guys this morning? I'm so glad you all took some time out of your Saturday to spend with us, listening to us read. I'm going to read to you today from Hopeless Romantic. Background for you is Leah Scott. Her baby sister Kelly is getting married, and Leah has always kind of been the caretaker for her sister. She's helping her at the wedding planner, put a deposit down. They've looked at many wedding planners. This is the one that Kelly wants. This is the second time they've been there, and Leah's got a definite physical attraction to the wedding planner, whose name is Teddy Baker. This is the first time that she's had a chance to actually sit and look at Teddy while they're doing some business. Also there is Teddy's assistant, Preston. He's going to pop in at some point. So here we go. Teddy was beautiful. Leah took in the ivory sweater dress Teddy wore, a classic contrast to her olive skin. Gold bangle bracelets jingled softly when Teddy moved her hand. Her hair was down, a soft brown that looked like it might be a shade darker underneath. Subtle brown eyeshadow accentuated the deep dark of Teddy's incredible eyes, and her full lips shone with the glimmer of a coat of lip gloss, just a hint of pink. And it wasn't odd at all that she noticed Teddy's impressive posture, right? Her spine was straight, her shoulders squared the whole time she spoke, twisted, moved her arms. Teddy wasn't tall, but she seemed it. The way someone carried themselves said a lot about them, her mother used to say, and nobody in her recent memory illustrated that point better than Teddy Baker. Her presence said, yes, I'm attractive. I also run this show, and I will snap you like a twig if I need to. Leah felt the corners of her mouth tug up at that thought. What are you smiling at? Kelly's question took her by surprise, and Leah sat up a little straighter. Teddy's eyes were on her as well, and Leah swore she could feel them straight down to her. Just happy to see you so happy, she replied, pulling an answer out of her ass so fast she even impressed herself. Teddy's gaze stayed on her for an extra beat. It did things to Leah. Shoulder bumps were Kelly's signature move of affection, and she leaned into Leah with one. Can you give Teddy the deposit? Oh, of course. Leah fished her wallet out of her purse and pulled out her Visa card. Preston took it from her hand and slid it through the square he'd plugged into his tablet. Leah Scott, he said as he watched the transaction on the screen. Your name seems familiar to me. Pretty common name, Leah said. She's a lawyer, Kelly piped in with pride in her tone. Oh, yeah. Preston turned the tablet around and pointed. Just sign here with your finger. So what kind of lawyer? Leah signed, hit the green button that read done. I'm a divorce attorney. A heavy coffee mug had to hit the ground just right in order to shatter, and Teddy's apparently had, the sound of the crash startling the other three enough to make them each flinch in their seats. Leah's head whipped towards Teddy, who sat wide-eyed and seemingly shocked, a Rorschach ink blot of coffee stain blossoming on her beautiful ivory dress. Oh my God, are you okay? Kelly sprang into action, her kindergarten teacher reflexes kicking into high alert, as they did anytime something was spilled or broken. Teddy stood slowly, head down, her focus seemingly on the puddle of coffee and pieces of mugs scattered across her hardwood floor. I'm fine. I'm sorry. Clumsy. She pointed over her shoulder, blinked several times, never meeting Leah's eyes, and then turned on her heel. Preston, set up the next appointment, would you? And in the next 3 seconds, she had disappeared into the back. A full 5 seconds of silence passed before Kelly and Leah exchanged looks. Is she okay? Leah asked Preston, whose head was turned towards Teddy's exit. I'm sure she's fine. He turned back around. Uncomfortable. It was the only way to describe him. Let's get your next appointment on the schedule. 10 minutes later, Leah and Kelly stood at Kelly's car. That was so weird, Kelly said, pulling her car door open and slipping inside. Right? It was such a strange reaction to a broken mug. Leah looked back at the storefront. You think she cut herself? Or she's allergic to divorce attorneys. Kelly chuckled and started the car. As if sensing Leah's confusion, Kelly said, "That's when she dropped the mug, when you said you were a divorce attorney." With a snorted laugh, she asked, "You didn't handle her divorce or something, did you?" Leah blinked at her. Kelly's smile faltered, no longer lighthearted. "You didn't, did you?" Leah wrinkled her nose and shrugged. "Is she divorced? I mean, I guess it's not out of the realm of possibility." "Oh, terrific." Kelly let her forehead fall against the steering wheel, then immediately lifted it up again. "Well, we've paid the deposit, and she's the best in the business. So let's hope if you did, we can all just remain professional." "Yeah, okay." "She got me, Leah." Pleading her case, thrilled and happy, excited anticipation, Leah loved seeing those things on her sister's face, hearing them in her voice. "She got everything I mentioned. I felt so comfortable with her." "I know. I don't want to unhire her." "Then we won't. We'll work it out. Don't worry." Words she'd said to Kelly their entire lives, and she'd always made it so, no matter how much of a pretzel she'd had to twist herself into. She always worked it out for Kelly. Kelly held her gaze for a beat. "Okay, I love you." "Love you too." Leah slammed Kelly's door and watched her pull away. One last glance at hopeless romantic. No Teddy standing in the window like last time. "Well, that's a damn shame," she muttered, waiting an extra moment or two just in case. Then she turned away and headed toward her car. She had information to find. Thank you.
Yay, well done. Awesome. Okay, moving on. Let's hear from Tammy Bird.
Good morning. Well, talk about intimidating, Anna. Try to speak between Georgia Beers and Melissa Brayden, especially when you're a thriller suspense writer, as I am, and have very little romance in what I write. But this is where I got put, so I'm going to swallow that intimidation and do my best to give you something worth listening to that does not include a lot of romance. I'm going to be reading to you from the Book of Promises. And this is, as I said, a thriller suspense novel. And the two things that you need to know for where we are jumping in to the novel for this reading is that Molly and Spencer have been friends since childhood, and they've created a book of promises that Molly has begun to make darker and darker as they've gotten older. And two, Molly is not who she appears to be and is very controlling of Spencer, and has decided that it's time for she and Spencer to kiss boys. And that's where we are in the novel. Spencer dribbled toward AJ and dodged at the last moment. She focused hard on the net, feet pounding the driveway until she was close enough to jump. Swish! The sound of the rubber as it sped through the netting gave her all the feels. She turned to her brother and pumped her arms in the air. Spencer ties the score. One more for the win. Like hell, sis. AJ swooped past and headed for the ball. His hand connected with the rubber seconds before it bounced into the fence that ran between their house and their neighbor at 1393 South Washington. He shoved the rubber into the pavement, his feet following its movement back to the center of the concrete court. Ready? Spencer pushed her hands off her knees and stood in front of AJ. Her heart pounded in concert with the sounds of the hollow bounces as her brother dribbled the ball again and again into the pavement between them. The January air made the warm wetness under her nose and her neck feel cool. It was in direct contrast to the heat rolling down her sides from the spaces under her arms as it made its way to the band of her jeans. Even in 45-degree weather, after an hour of steady runs and jumps and shoves, she and AJ were both flushed and drenched. She opened her fingers wide in preparation and looked him in the eye. Oh, that point is mine. Playing basketball with AJ remained one of her favorite things to do. Their dad put up the net years ago to encourage family time. It worked for all of them but him. He left anyway. Truth be told, that was fine with Spencer. The house was calmer without him. AJ tried to fake to the left. Spencer matched the move and tried to swipe the ball. She missed. AJ changed position. Spencer mirrored his movement. The two moved around the court, the ball transferring from his hands to hers several times as each struggled to get the upper hand. Basketball was the one place Spencer felt her brother's equal. She wasn't better than him, but she wasn't worse either. The siblings were both muscular, AJ in a societally appropriate hard abs kind of way that made him one of the most popular guys on their high school campus, and Spencer in a too tall, disproportioned kind of way that garnered Barbie-esque insults from others beginning in elementary school. Intellectually, she knew the societal bullshit was just that, bullshit. But when you had small breasts, muscular arms and legs, and a pudgy belly, all of which were constant talking points by everyone from family to strangers, it played on one's emotional psyche. Spencer's outstretched fingers found the ball. She pulled to the side and pushed down. She was in control again. Easy, Tiger. AJ shook out his hand and took one quick step back. With his face red and sweaty from the game, it was hard to tell if he was hurt or just trying to throw her off. Spencer guessed it was the latter. Easy my ass, come on. Her brother's shiny form blurred around the edges. She used her free arm to wipe the sweat from beneath her eyes, careful even as she focused on the net to not dislodge her glasses. The hollow pop against the concrete moved through her body. Her eyes found the net. She lined up the shot, pushed off the pavement, lifted her arm and released. She liked the burn in her shoulder from the movement and the feel of the wind that swirled up under her t-shirt and pricked across her sweaty stomach. Neither sibling announced the end of the game. They simply let the ball bounce and roll to its own resting place as they settled side by side on the grass. The two faced the court, knees bent and arms back, with their hands bearing their upper body weight, silent except for the sound of fast, shallow breaths interspersed with deep intakes of air. For several moments, both worked to bring their bodies back to a calm, resting state. In spite of their differences and mild sibling confrontations, AJ was the one person in the world Spencer didn't feel uncomfortable with in silence. The two of them even had a dash of twin telepathy. It didn't matter that he was a boy and she was a girl. They often finished each other's sentences and always felt when one or the other was in pain. So what's up with you? AJ asked. Up? Spencer wasn't sure why she was holding back. The two didn't always tell one another everything, but they shared more than most siblings she knew. Spencer, come on, AJ motioned to the court. That was mad play. Besides, that shit at dinner last night wasn't you. I don't know. Molly's being weird. Tell me. Spencer closed her eyes. She let her head fall back and moved it from side to side. The cracking as she made the circular motion felt good. She said she wanted to hang out this afternoon. Then she left me to eat fucking cherry pie with her mom. She with Lucas? AJ moved his head slightly toward his sister. Yeah, but what? That's basically your entire MO. You know it. AJ sat up and wrapped his arms around his knees. Spencer looked from him to the wooden fence that separated them from their neighbor. She thought about her pact with Molly to buy the house when they were old enough, so nothing ever came between them again. Those were Molly's words. Spencer just agreed. She agreed because she would die if she didn't see Molly every day for the rest of her life. She agreed because when they were 9 and held hands walking to the bus stop, the wetness of her palm mixing with the wetness of Molly's palm made it hard to swallow and harder to think. 9 years later, she would still do anything for Molly. Over the last few years, though, the connection became more strained. Tension between them continued to grow, and more it was over stupid stuff, like boys. Spencer thought Molly wanted her to kiss Jordan, or a boy, any boy. So why was she acting like the kiss broke some promise between them? Not being connected would be easier and harder. Spencer repositioned herself with her arms wrapped around her knees. How could she explain to AJ that something changed when she kissed Jordan? It wasn't just the way Molly demanded Spencer wait for her today. It was more than that. It was the way Molly described her dream, like it was real, like she enjoyed recalling the details. It was in the way she blew off Spencer's dream of working in the mobile app industry, but bragged about her own YouTube channel, like it was going to be her claim to fame. It was in the way she pressed her forehead against Spencer's before walking away from her this morning, and the way she brushed off Spencer's text message, like it didn't matter. Earth to Spencer. Spencer, did you hear me? AJ's elbow poked Spencer's arm. Ouch, asshole, I heard you. She took a deep breath. So, I think I like Jordan. Spencer didn't know she was going to say the words until they left her mouth. She did like Jordan. He didn't make her stomach tremble when he held her hand or make her weak when he kissed her, but he felt kind and real, and right now she needed both. Does Molly know? That's the thing. We have this book. It's like promises we make to each other and things we want to do throughout life. Spencer hesitated. Another rule was never, ever mention the book to anyone, not even family. Okay, and I'll stop there for now. And thank you guys for allowing me to read to you this morning. And I will turn it back over to romance.
Yay, well done. Thank you for that. Okay, so let's go ahead and finish our readings today with Melissa Brayden.
I think it's my turn, yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Melissa, and I am a contemporary romance author. I write fun, flirty romance, usually with some snacks or wine involved. As in this particular book, which takes place on a vineyard in a small town. It's the story of Joey, who has inherited Tangle Valley Vineyard from her family, and they live in a quaint small town that they're trying to preserve that particular culture. And Joey is angered because a commercial hotel has gone up in town, the Jade Hotel, which is a chain. And there's just something about that hotel's manager, Becca, however, that she just can't quite shake. And in this particular scene, Joey and Becca are out on the town for the first time. 2 amazing brown cows with 2 scoops and added chocolate sauce, the server said, and placed a curvy glass in front of each of them. Oh, hello, sexy, Becca said, examining the magnificent drink. Joey winked. You're welcome. You were not kidding about this place. Becca dug in, then gestured to her dish with a spoon, dropping to a whisper to say, Maraschino's is importing crack-laced ice cream into their shop. Joey whispered back, no, they just make it fresh daily. They ate and chatted until they were ready to burst, but Joey wasn't quite ready to say goodnight just yet. Becca sat back. You led me across the dance floor 2 steps at a time, introduced me to illegal homemade ice cream, and I don't know how we're going to top this. Take a walk with me? Joey asked. It'll stop me from curling up into a sugar coma if I can burn off some energy. All right, Becca said, but only for coma dodging purposes. And you'll owe me. I mean, I'm kind of like the Godfather. How about a free glass of Pinot the next time you visit the winery? Sold. Becca smiled and her eyes crinkled at the sides. It was a great look. All of Becca's were. Joey hadn't known herself to have a type, but she did now, and it looked exactly like Becca Crawford. So when will that be? Joey asked as they exited the restaurant and headed down the sidewalk. They were in a less than crowded part of town, which afforded them space to walk beneath the streetlights all on their own. You already can't wait to see me. I must be doing okay. Well, you definitely deserve an A for the human factor, but your employment skews your average. Joey pushed her hands into her pocket, keeping her gaze firmly on the path ahead of them. It was easier that way. I'm going to focus on that A, Becca said. You also get one, but skewed for the judgmental factor. Gasp out loud, Joey said. I am not judgmental. Well, what about your sharp criticism and rush to conviction regarding the Jade Hotel? Joey scoffed. I'd hardly call it a rush. Becca countered. The fact of the matter is you don't know the effect that the resort's opening is going to have on the town or on your winery. You're up in arms and it's all for nothing, trust me. I'm expecting a fruit basket when all of this is said and done. Oh, well, your ambition, it may be delusional. Am I delusional in thinking there's something happening between us that neither one of us expected? Joey gave her head the smallest of shakes. Wasn't expecting you to just go there. Shouldn't we warm up? Then you forgot about the ambitious part. Neither said anything for a moment. They walked the quiet section of the street, listening to the buzz of the streetlights overhead. Joey couldn't decide whether to punt the ball or go for it. Of course, there's something happening between us. She said it as if it were the most natural thing in the world, when the truth was that her heart was impersonating a jackhammer, and there was nothing every day about the excited burst of energy she got when Becca was around that, to be honest, she could really use in her life about now. With a hand on her arm, Becca turned her so that they were facing each other beneath the shadowy awning of a closed boutique. Joey, was all she said. It was all she needed to say. The look in Becca's eyes communicated the rest. Joey felt that word all over, her name on Becca's lips. She took one step forward, eliminating the already small distance between them. It was her way of meeting Becca halfway, of hopefully showing her that Becca's lips captured hers before she could complete the thought. Everything went still, like the universe had a pause button for everything but this kiss, which sweet Moscato was better than any kiss should have the power to be. Her lips moved over Becca's, and she savored not only their contact, but the chain reaction it sent through her body. Everything warmed. Her fingertips tingled, her stomach flip-flopped, and her body craved. She cradled Becca's face in her hands as they kissed, slow, measured, and wonderful in the shadows. A shadowy kiss. That's how she would always remember it. Becca tasted sweet like the chocolate sauce. She would always remember that too. And then, so very sadly, it was over. Joey's eyes were still closed, however. She needed them to be so she could cling to it all for just a few seconds longer. When she opened them again, the world was still waiting for her, and so was Becca. I just took the liberty, Becca said. Joey touched her lips. Is that what they call it? Whatever it was. She shook her head and offered Becca a smile. We might be mortal enemies, but we can sure kiss like we were always meant to kiss, Becca said. Joey exhaled and met Becca's gaze in the dim light. Yeah, what you just said. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Well done. Okay. Yay. All right, let's have everybody come back now. All these wonderful, wonderful authors. Okay. And here comes the scary part. Okay, so thank you everybody for those wonderful readings this morning. What a great way to start the morning. You all have probably noticed that I was putting links to purchase their books in the chat. Please do so. Please click those links, purchase those books if you haven't already. But these people spend this time writing these books for us. So support them. Go buy their books. Okay, excellent. So again, if you have some questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A. We'll get to as many as we can. But I'm going to start while folks are gathering their wits from all the kissing that's been happening this morning, and start asking you some of my own questions. And I'm going to start with Georgia. So Georgia, where'd this book come from? What sparked the idea for this book?
This book is kind of, well, the idea came, it was sparked when I was helping my niece get ready for her wedding, because she had a wedding planner, and I went to all the meetings with her, and I was just kind of blown away by how many things a wedding planner does and how organized she has to be. It was really kind of fascinating. And I am a person who's very organized and I like order, but I would never have been able to handle what she handled. So I thought it would be, oops, sorry, I have a cat. I thought it would be interesting to make her one of my characters. And the research had already been right there. The other aspect of this book is that it's kind of an homage to romantic comedies, which I love and I've seen, so I kind of wanted to throw some in there without actually, like, you know, stealing from them. I wanted to mention them and give them some kudos, because people like me they get me through lots and lots and lots of life.
Okay, great. Thank you. Radclyffe, how about you? Where'd the idea for this particular book come from?
I had already decided I was going to write another one in the Provincetown Tales, and it's been quite a while since I had. So I had it on the schedule, and that was early last year, and I was due to start writing it in March, which was just about when the world kind of turned upside down. And I was thinking, and I had been thinking about what was happening in the world, and about the cruise ships, which were all over the news at the time. And I remembered when I gave my first reading in Provincetown, the first cruise ship to stop there was out in the bay. And what that triggered for me was the fact that I could write a story about what was happening in the world in Provincetown and use that setting, which is what I did along with my new characters. And I had the perfect setup because I had a small town, I had a doctor, I had a police force, so I could bring in characters and sort of deal with this in a way that I hoped wasn't bleak, but was current.
Okay. Using the pandemic to your advantage. I like it. I like it. Tammy, how about you? Where'd the Book of Promises come from? Up, you're mute, Tammy.
I actually am from Colorado, and when I write, setting typically is the first thing that comes to me in anything that I write. And I knew that I wanted to write something from that setting, from the Colorado setting, and from Red Rocks in particular, which is where I spent much of my childhood. And my wife and I were back there visiting a few years ago, and I thought we went back by my childhood home, and I remembered that my best friend and I back then we used to tease that we were going to buy the house that was next door to my house. She lived a few houses down, and we were going to buy the house next door to my house, and she and I were going to live there together forever so that we would never be separated. Well, thank goodness my best friend was not the Molly of the Book of Promises, but it started me thinking, well, what if, we never did buy the house? What if she had been a psychopath? And what would have happened to us if that would have happened? Because my mind, for whatever reason, doesn't ever go the romance route, but instead goes the what if something horrific happened route. And I just started thinking about that and decided that I would put the address of my house was 1391 South Washington, and the address in the book that Molly and Spencer are going to buy is 1393, which would be the house in between them. And the house itself plays a huge role in the book. And so that's where the idea of that came from.
So I was mute that time. Melissa, you.
Listen, I enjoy a good glass of wine. So I wanted to write at some point about a vineyard. And so when I set out for a new series, I thought this is my chance to do it 3 times in a row. And I love to, take trips when I can to places like Napa or even Fredericksburg, Texas, which is close by, and visit the wineries. And so this was a great opportunity to kind of merge 2 things that I love, romance and wine, and put them into a series. And so I did. And this was book 1 in the series.
Excellent. And Anna, how about you?
Well, so I approached my publisher, Bywater, and I said, wouldn't it be great if I wrote a series about veterinarians who treated magical creatures? And Salem said, no. She didn't say it quite like that. But she said, well, what if you just tried writing a series about veterinarians? And I'm married to a vet, and I feel like I went to vet school. And because of that, I don't know, so many years of our lives were like revolved around the veterinary world. And I thought, well, I should use that. So I did.
Okay. And I think you just asked one of the questions that came up. Joni says, and I love how your dogs are portrayed in Spindrift. And of course you're humans, secondarily. Have you worked as a vet? But you just kind of answered that question, I think. Okay. And we do have a question. This is for everybody. Roz asks, do any of you have a topic or a thing that you've decided you will specifically not include in your writing? And if so, do you feel comfortable sharing what it is? Let's start with Tammy. How about you? Do you have an answer for that question for Roz?
I really don't know of anything that I wouldn't include in my writing if it fit in that piece of writing. So I think because of the nature of what I write, thrillers and suspense, it opens it up for a lot more things that the others may not include, but that I'm willing to go there with.
Okay. Radclyffe, how about you? Anything that you're like, nope, not going in my books?
No, I agree. I think it depends on what I'm writing, what I need to put in the book to create the events that are critical to the story. There are things I'm pretty sure I would not do in graphic detail, which I think many times don't need to be described in graphic detail, particularly thinking about the audience who may be reading the book. But as to the events themselves, if we all live in the world, and as much as we write fiction, the world that we live in is critical to include in our work as well.
Melissa?
Yeah, I don't think that there's any one particular topic that I think is off limits in my head, but I do think I want it to fit with what it is that I'm writing. And I tend to write lower angst, lighthearted, romantic comedies. And so sometimes I think if something were too dark, it might be hard to come back from. But I've killed people. I've had people injured or maimed. There's been drug use. So I do go there. I just don't think I spend a ton of time there once I do.
Okay. Now, Anna.
Listen, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
Okay.
I think I would echo the sentiments about how, if it's relevant to the story, but also there are definitely things that I wouldn't portray with too much graphic detail. But I don't know.
Because we all know that Anna enjoys torturing her characters.
I do. I did frequently. I do terrible things, and then I am told to remove the scene.
Georgia, anything off limits for you?
It's not even that she enjoys to torture things, it's that she goes on social media and tells everybody, like, you know what, I'm going to murder somebody today. How do you guys feel about that? Are you all right with that? Because that's what's happening. That's what she does. I will echo everybody else's sentiment. And I will also say that in this, things can change down the line. I don't think I'm going to write about the pandemic. I don't think I'm putting it in any of my books. I don't even know if I'm going to mention it. I might change my mind tomorrow, but as of right now, I don't know. I think it would be hard to, like Melissa said, I tend to write happier, sort of fluffy, romantic comedy-ish type things. And even if you put the pandemic in there, still millions of people died. And so I don't know that I even want to touch on that. But I say that today. Ask me tomorrow. Maybe my answer will be different.
Okay. So we'll all be back here on Zoom tomorrow and I'll ask you that question. Cindy wants to know, how do each of you decide what scene from your book you will read aloud at events like this one? Anna, how about you? How do you choose your scenes to do readings?
Usually I never, ever do anything even remotely graphic. But I knew I was going to be reading against, the romance grades. And I knew that Tammy was, going to be reading potentially some awesome thriller scene. So I talked to my editor, Rachel Spangler, and I said, Ray, help me, what should I do? And she said, I've been telling you for ages, you should read the boathouse scene. And I said, I don't think I'm brave enough, but that's how I chose this scene. Yeah, I just asked.
So Rachel talked you into it. Okay. Tammy, how about you?
I'm glad you chose me after her, because that's a perfect segue, because I actually chose not to read a more graphic thriller scene because I was reading against some of the great romance writers. And so I decided to go the other way and choose something that was a little more uplifting, one of the more uplifting, at least, scenes where there were some things going on that was a little bit happier. So I chose, that's how I chose this particular scene. And that's usually what I do. You have to find something that's going to fit within the time constraints that you've been given, of course. And then once you meet that parameter, then I try to find something that's going to mesh with whatever panel it is that I'm going to be on.
Okay. Georgia?
I think I try to pick a scene that has a little bit of humor. I don't want to go too far into the book. This is a little different because the book has been out for a while. So I think I probably could have read a later scene and been okay with that. But I try not to go too far into the book because I don't want to spoil anything. I, like Anna, I'll read a kissing scene. I'm not going to read you a sex scene. I'm sorry, I'm just not. So much red. Good. I just try to find something, and always with the two main characters too. I like if it's something that has a little flirting in it, maybe the first time they meet or the first time they flirt with each other. Try to stay in the beginning of the book, but give the listeners a taste of the attraction that these two have for each other.
Okay. Radclyffe.
I agree with what everyone said. I will generally not read a scene that is deep into the book because the listeners almost certainly, unless they've read the book, don't know the characters and don't know the story. I will often try to do the meet where the first two characters meet each other. In this particular instance, I wanted to give a sense of the style of the book, the tone of the book, and introduce one of the main characters. And it also happens to be the literal beginning of the book, which I often don't read, but this time I felt it was a good introduction to the Provincetown tales because Provincetown is so important. And again, I have to like the scene or I don't want to read it.
There's that. Melissa.
I like to read something where things start to happen. Usually it's in the first 100 pages of the book. Usually it's flirtatious and fun in nature, but maybe it's the point where the characters start to feel something. And so you get that duality of fun and playful, but also a little heartfelt and sincere. But yeah, I think I want it to matter. So usually it's when that spark starts to happen.
Okay. And Joanne wants to know, are puns a general no-go in books, or are any of you a fan of puns?
That's specific. I'm fine
yeah.
with puns. I don't have any beef with puns. We don't get in arguments. I think they're fun. I welcome them into my work at any point.
Okay.
Agreed. I agree with that.
Anyone else?
I agree.
I will say I don't really have puns in mind, but I do use some like stupid in the Book of Promises. A couple of my main characters are techno geeks and they're in coding club, and so they flirt with each other using jokes like, "Are you an applet? Because you make me feel all gooey, GUI inside," stuff like that. So
that totally works.
Okay.
The highest form of humor.
Rad, anything to add to this? Or?
I have nothing against puns.
Okay. So my next question for you guys is, okay, well, so yay, you're Goldie finalists. Good on you. What's coming up next? What do you have out now? What's coming? What's your next publication? What's going on? Tammy, how about you? What's next?
Well, I'm working on another Sandman. My first novel was a standalone, but it left a character kind of hanging. And so we are now going to follow that hanging character who actually was a helper to a serial killer. And he made his living from that. And now the serial killer has been locked up. So he has to find a new way to make a living on the dark web. So we're going to follow him. It's called Protege. And I'm about 2/3 of the way through that. So that's what's coming up next for me.
Okay. Georgia?
Currently available is The Secret Poet, which is my take on the Cyrano de Bergerac trope. And then I am currently writing the third book in the Swizzle Stick romance series. The first one comes out in August. That's called Shaken or Stirred. That's about a trio of Italian cousins and the bar that their family owns and them helping each other navigate through life and love.
Okay. Radclyffe. Radclyffe, how
I had
about
a
you?
new release in May, Unrivaled, which is the 5th in the series that began with Fated Love. Again, I introduced new characters, an entire slew of new characters in the book that precedes this, Passionate Rivals. It's about a group of young residents, kind of a queer Grey's Anatomy, and it revisits Quinn and Honor from the Fated Love. So that came out in May. I have Pathway to Love, which is coming out in the fall, which is one in the Rivers series, which will also be introducing a new romantic pair and revisiting my upstate New York small community series.
Okay. Melissa.
Next up, For me is in November is Marry Me, which is about a woman getting married and then meets a wedding planner who kind of shakes up that whole notion, and have a bit of a triangle there.
Okay. Anna?
Why do you say my name like that, Carlene?
Because I can't wait to hear who's going to die.
Oh, okay. So in July, the sequel to my first book, Compass Rose, is coming out called Seawolf. And because that's not strictly a romance, I was able to do some of the atrocious things I wanted to do to my character. So I'm excited about that. And then in January, the sequel to Spindrift came out. That was Night Tide, very dark. And so I'm now working on the third book in the Seal Cove romance, which will be about Stormy, who runs a cafe/brewery, and I'm going to keep it lower angst than I normally do. So I'm excited for that challenge.
I don't believe you.
I was like, sure.
I did recently turn to my wife and I was like, what if I put a murder in there?
I knew it. I knew it.
I don't know. So can things?
Oh, we lost you,
We lost you, Carly. I think you unplugged.
which could be for the best.
Hey, hey. Can things get angsty with Stormy is what I want to know.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think so.
But her
either.
love interest could. I mean, I don't know. Watch me.
Good point. Good point. So again, we have a few more minutes left. So if you got some questions, we just have 2 minutes, but we'll try to get to it. But here's my question for you. Coffee or tea? Coffee or tea? Melissa?
There's only one flavor of something in the world that I can't stand. Like the number one most awful flavor is tea. Like I don't know, I was born that way. My sisters feel the same way, so I think it's genetic.
Okay. Tammy, preference, coffee, tea?
Coffee all day.
All day. Anna?
Coffee's for the morning and tea is for the afternoon.
Okay. Gonna get proper. Rad, how about you? Got a preference?
Espresso.
Ooh, fancy. All right. Georgia?
I have tried my entire life to love coffee and I just don't. Unless it has a lot of sugar and a lot of milk and tastes very little like coffee, I don't want it. Give me some.
Okay.
So dessert, you want dessert.
I want dessert. Yes, then I can handle coffee. I can
So
have
tea or dessert.
because it tastes like Bailey's. It just tastes like coffee. I don't like the taste.
Okay. I'm actually there with you. I'm there with you. I'm with my strawberry banana punch. So one last question we do have from the audience. I think we have time. We can get this in. Louisa wants to know, is it easier to write a book in a series as opposed to a standalone story because you already have the characters established? Do you find it easier, or does that actually make it more difficult? Radclyffe, you've got a few series. Talk to us about that.
They're different, obviously. And quick answer is, I don't think it's easier. It's just a different challenge. If you're writing a series, you have to find something new to inject into the series for the characters. Otherwise, you're simply recounting or revisiting characters where nothing new is happening. And that will not keep readers coming back for very long.
Okay. Georgia?
I think it's easier and harder. I think it's easier because after the first one, you've got the setting established, you know who you're writing about. You kind of have an idea as you're writing the first one where it's going down the line. But it also can get harder because by the time you go to second and third and fourth, you start to get a little bored and you're ready for a new setting. So you have to force yourself. This is my experience, at least. I have to force myself to, okay, stay here for a little while longer. So it's
A little bit of both.
yeah.
Anna, how about you as you've forayed into the series writing?
I'm hoping it gets easier. I think my experience so far has been that if I'm working with a series where, you know, maybe the world is the same, but the characters shift from book to book, that keeps me from getting too bored, as Georgia pointed out, you know, because it's like, you know, different points of view, different conflicts. What I've learned from working on the Compass Rose series is that it's super helpful to have a plot and to have that plot like planned out in advance. And if you don't do that, you run into a lot of difficulties. Speaking from the perspective of a friend, I plot. So I'm hoping that as I grow as a writer, that series will get easier. But right now, they've proven to be challenging for me.
Okay. Tammy?
Well, this protege that I'm doing now is my first step into that kind of series feel. And I'm actually finding it takes longer to write a second book in a series than it does to write a standalone book, because I have to keep going back and saying, crap, what color was his hair? Shit, what did they already know about him? Oh, dang, I have to change that whole scene because that wouldn't work because they would have already known this. And so for me, it's fun. I'm enjoying it. And for me, it keeps me less bored, I think, because there's more that I have to keep together and figure out. But I think it's just different. I think it's a different kind of challenge.
Okay. And Melissa?
I don't know about easier, but I definitely write the series books faster, especially in the middle, which is kind of what I call the sweet spot, because you know the world, you know the characters, and you kind of know where you're going, and you're still really, really excited to be there. So that's the best for me, is when I'm smack dab in the middle of the series.
Okay. All right. Well, that's going to be our time. I want to thank each and every one of you so much for spending this time with us today, sharing your work. You're all marvelous. Congratulations on being shortlisted. Well done. And good luck. I hope that we're going to see everybody within the sound of my voice at the Goldie ceremony on the 31st of July, and hopefully the entire conference. That would be great. So thank you so much, and everybody have a fantastic day.
I
Take care,
Thank you
y'all.
guys. Bye.